having a pantry from harvest to harvest, that was just the way things used to be done. I mean, there was no question. People, whether they grew it in their backyard, whether they were farmers, whether they got it from the local farmer, there weren't grocery stores to go to. And yes, there were bakers, and yes, there were butchers, but the extras on the table, you were going to create on your own, for the majority. Cheeses were put up, vegetables were put up, from harvest to harvest. So having a pantry was just wisdom. It was just what people did for century after century. And today we're just so disconnected from our food. We do not have a clue of the importance or the wisdom in having a pantry in today's society. Hi everyone, it's Leah with Family Heritage Living. I wanted to talk with you a little bit more today about pantries and why you should and why you should not have them. The last few videos we've been doing on pantries have actually had a really good response. A lot of people are interested. A lot of people have, if you haven't read the comments, go ahead and read them please, because a lot of people share with what they do or why they do it, or ideas of what maybe you should or shouldn't do. And of course it all applies differently to everybody. The last video I did, though, is not doing a pantry out of fear. Don't let fear be your motivating factor in doing a pantry. And that ties in with this video, or this video ties in with that, because someone had said, well, that they felt if the end of society came, the world as we know it, that a pantry wouldn't really do you any good because the government or your neighbor would end up taking it, a mob would end up taking it. And that's probably true. I don't negate that. But the thing is this: if that's why you're doing a pantry, then you're doing it for the wrong reasons. Because again, you're doing it out of fear. A couple of videos ago, I said that my family was not preppers, and I wasn't exactly sure what terminology to give us, except the fact that what we do is a way of life. And you have to back up. If we looked at our society and we looked over the last century, and we could see that only about 80 years ago has it become common where we have major disconnect with our food, and many of us, the majority of us, buy our food from a local grocery store. Before that, what did people do? Most of America, even in towns, okay? I don't know if you've ever driven through even a fair-sized town. If you look back in the backyards of the older homes, you will often see what looks like a barn that's been converted into a garage. And that's because many people in that time would keep a cow and had horses because there wasn't automobiles, but they also had kitchen gardens. They still can, even in town, in what we would consider to be suburbia. They preserved, they had root cellars, not basements, not the man caves like we know today, but cellars, because that's how they preserved their root crops. That's where they stored their canned goods. So I think the big thing there is that prepping as we know it today. Ron's working on the roof. I had to turn, the sun was in my face. And as you can see, I'm still washing jars because my wonderful husband was actually down to, see this green tote back there? I had 3 green totes that size. And the gray tote there, let's see, I had 2 totes approximately that size of jars left from the cellar. I was so excited. And I did not come out one day. Actually, guess what day was that? Was that yesterday? I do not know. I did not come out yesterday nor the day before. And my husband went back into the attic and he calls and he says, I found more jars. I said, oh yay. One of the problems that we had since the house has been empty for 3 years is we had, of course, red squirrels find their way into the attic. So the jars were compromised by their mischievousness. So I got to bring them out and do the pre-wash to take them home. So, but the other cool thing is, let's see if I can show you. The gallon, he found some milk jars, and he found this gallon milk jar I'd forgotten I had. So that's pretty cool. All right, so let's see if I can pick back up where I left off. People preserving food has just always been a way of life up until the past 2/3 of this last century, this last 100 years. So the disconnect is so real amongst society today that instantly, if you speak about putting up any food for any length of time, they automatically assume that you are a prepper, that you're looking at the worst case scenario in mankind. The reality is not true. For our family, besides the fact that it just made perfect sense to us, Ron and I have been together since 1993. No, that's not right. Ron and I have been together since 1989. And in that time, Ron has had 2 back surgeries. He's had several times where he's been off and had to collect workman's compensation because of back injuries. There was one time where he was off from his back and didn't get to collect workman's compensation because it was not an injury from work. So he had to collect unemployment. You know, Ron's been off work before due to his back, and I've gone to work, but my income that I would bring home was nothing compared to his. So having the pantry was a godsend, because then we didn't have to worry about much at the grocery store because it was already in the pantry. And how we'd always done it in the past for years was when we were in a situation where we had to use the pantry, and we couldn't restock it, that as soon as we were able to, when he went back to work, that was the first thing that we prioritized, to restock what we had used, so that we were never below what we deemed to be relevant for us. Another prime reason for having a pantry is it saves you money in the end. How many times do you go to the store and you go when you're hungry and you impulse buy, or you even buy things that aren't food? You're going grocery shopping and if you go to a Walmart or like a Meijer, who has different departments, you think, oh yeah, I'm going to go look at this, and you end up spending more money. Or even through the grocery aisle, something's on sale, so you impulse buy because it's a good price, it's a good deal, or it looks good, it sounds good to you. So over time, a pantry discipline really does end up saving a lot of money. The other thing too is, depending on the longevity of your pantry, if your pantry is for multiple years, if it's stocked that way, you know what? The fluctuation of crops and food prices is not going to affect you in the long run. There are some things that are very hard to stock up on if you don't have the means or the know-how, like butter, for example, or milk. You're always going to have to buy something if you're not producing it for yourself. But the majority of stuff, if you're on a whole foods diet, can be kept in your pantry safely without loss of nutrients, for the advantage of the benefit to your family and physically the nutrients needed, as well as financially. Okay, there's a study that came out that said that 50% of Americans are one paycheck away from disaster, financial disaster. That's easy to believe. And we talked about earlier how it can be an illness that happens, a physical disability that happens that causes a financial change in your circumstance. And or it could be something common as a major house repair or a car repair. It could be somebody, your family member, friend, or just somebody that is having their own financial struggle that you would like to help. But if you don't have the pantry to fall back on, and most of us live paycheck to paycheck, even in times of when debt is non-existent, that you're not able to help where there's a need if you haven't done some form of savings. And most of us can't put money away very often because we end up using it. So the food pantry, again, it's an insurance, it is a major resource, and it is a savings account. I'm just a firm believer that everybody should have a pantry, and a thoughtful pantry, not just a pantry full of stuff, but stuff that you actually use. We have so many social nets these days, and to me, they're necessary, and for some, to me, I think they're important to have. But unfortunately, like I've talked in other videos, I don't think they're not well managed. They don't really do what the intent is for, and even when somebody is using it truly just on a temporary basis, it's still not often enough to meet their needs. So, we as people should really feel more responsible for meeting our needs versus going to those government social nets, or thinking that they're there in the back of our head, on our back of our mind, thinking, oh, they're there, if anything happens, if there's a safety net there. I guess it seems kind of silly, if you're not growing your own, why put food up? If you're not growing your own to go from harvest to harvest, why put food up? And I really just think that it's a manner of prudence. We have no problem spending money on gadgets and gadgets and going out for entertainment, but when we talk about putting extra things away little by little, people they don't want to, because it's the food's going to be there tomorrow. I don't have to worry about it. I'll just get it when I need it, and that's it. But we've seen far too often when that does not happen. So, and we have learned in that time that the longevity of a personal injury can vary. All right. And it can, once you have that personal injury, once you have an illness, you have a personal injury, it so much affects your income. And what's the first thing that I said this before, the first thing that the people adjust is their food budget, because that's usually the only thing that you have that has any give in it at all. People live in areas of where natural disasters happen a lot, over in California, down in Florida, Louisiana, and yeah, most people don't even have enough food to last a week, let alone 2 weeks. And in a national disaster, it's hopeful and desired that the infrastructure will be up and running within that amount of time. It's not always the case. So at least a month of food is wise in those areas. But you go beyond the national disaster to personal disasters, and you realize, especially if you've experienced it in the past, that the importance of a pantry supersedes any breakdown in society. The breakdown in society, I believe, eventually will happen. Whether it happens in my lifetime, I have absolutely no idea. But that is not my driving factor for having a pantry. My driving factor for having a pantry is that I understand income variation. I understand personal struggles. I understand the price in food. That kind of goes, we won't get into that soapbox. It is something that you can control with wisdom that aids in your family when there are hard times. And if nothing ever happens, if you got your pantry stocked up and you are shopping out of it, then you can absolutely be a blessing to somebody else. You can bless others with your extra. You can bless others by entertaining them, by fellowshipping with them, by preparing things for people in need, by helping those that themselves, maybe they are, can't prepare right now. Maybe they've had a surgery. Maybe they're just down on their luck. I mean, there's always things that you can do with your abundance if you feel like you'll not be able to use your abundance, okay? And those are things we should do anyways, but I'm just saying that having a pantry is not a waste. And I feel like it's a savings account or an insurance. Many people don't have any problem bulking up their savings accounts, and they certainly make sure that their insurances are paid. And that's exactly what a pantry is. It's just wisdom in a different area, and maybe even a better wisdom in some areas than bulking up your savings. Because things happen, things fail. But that is why, though, if you're going to put the time and effort into a pantry, you need to know basic storage information. You need to know basic know-how, rotation, containers that will allow bugs in and that won't allow bugs in, because just not every container is food safe for longevity. Again, I stated in the last video, you need to sit down and you need to determine what the minimal what you go through every week as a family, to kind of get an idea of what you're looking at for the time period that you're wanting to store up, and then go with the basics. to begin with. Then you can add more things. But if you haven't, again, I just can't emphasize this enough. If you don't eat whole foods and you're wanting to do a food pantry, I can't emphasize enough the importance to, if you can transfer yourself and your family to a whole food diet, the benefit of that. First off, your food pantry is going to be so much more economical for you. Secondly, the storage in it is going to be so much longer than processed foods, whether they're boxed or cans or whatever. And thirdly, it gives you the ability to expound on what your menus are. Because so often, like with Whole Foods, you can have, I'm grab a number here, 6 items that you can make 6 different ways. Where if you have a box of whatever, chances are that's all, it's got 1 item to make it there. I mean, there's very little change that you can do to it. So, that's just, I just wanted to get that thought up there on this video. Again, our videos are short right now. We're dealing with a super slow internet for upload. We will be going home next week. We are really excited about that. The reason that we know we're going home next week is we finally got Josiah's doctor to say that she needed to see him. And we've scheduled an appointment for August 7th. We also have had some work orders come in that require everybody's attention, and they are time sensitive, so we have got to get back home regardless where we're at with down here. 8 weeks, 9 weeks, that's long enough, right? So we're all excited, finalizing, finishing, packing up, and we will get back and hopefully by God's grace resume our life up there. But all right, I guess that's it for now. Y'all have a great rest of the weekend, and we will talk soon. God bless.